All right, so I think we got the recording going. Welcome again to our first ever webinar with Western Washington Safe Families for Children. This is new for me. I'm just talking into a telephone, and kind of an odd feeling to have people out there listening. I suppose if I was into radio, maybe that would be an easier thing. But we're going to have a trial run here of using this webinar software. As I shared, you guys can type in questions down at the bottom right there if things come up, or I can unmute you if you want to share a comment or a story or have a question and you'd rather speak it than type it. Our topic today is this idea of pursuing the heart of a mother, and this material originally is from Renee Franks and Monty Priest, and Renee is part of Safe Families. She was in California for quite a while, and I think she moved to Texas, maybe. I might be wrong about that. I haven't met her. Nicole has, and she's been an amazing implementer of Safe Families for Children. And Monty Priest is one of our supervisors in California. I had the privilege of going down and training with him last year, and he essentially has my job for the Santa Ana Olive Crest office and is kind of our supervisor for Western United States Safe Families. And pursuing the heart of the mother, we say mother most of the time because 98% of the time we're working with single moms. We're not only some of the time are we 2% of the time we have a dad that's asking for help. And our big thing is learning relational ministry, and this idea that it's not a transaction with Safe Families. It's not you do something for me and I do something for you. It's this idea of a relationship, and this quote on the right there says, "I didn't cause it, I can't control it, I can't cure it." It's from a book called Beautiful Boy about a father. It's a father's memoir about his son's journey into methamphetamine addiction and just the difficulty of a family member being alongside that. And in some ways that's that can kind of be what our host families or our family friends are feeling with these bio parents. Just that we want to help so much, we don't always know how to help. We want to see change, but we can't make change happen, and we often have a hard enough time changing ourselves, let alone another person. And so we try to focus on relationship. We believe in Safe Families that safety for these families doesn't come from an absence of crisis. Safety for the families we encounter comes from the presence of relationships, and that's the relationships that our host families provide, that our family friends provide, that our family coaches provide from the extended network of teams. And many times families we encounter, there's really no element of safety except for the Safe Families people that enter their lives. And things can seem really messy, but because of Safe Families volunteers, those people are there. And I'm going to try to not ramble on and on, but try to share some stories today. I think stories are a lot more engaging than just slideshow. But a couple of months ago, we hosted mom's kids, and this mom was staying at a shelter up in Woodinville. She went back to the shelter, and she was telling the other moms about Safe Families, and one of those gals called us, and one of the first things out of her mouth was, can you come talk to me about Safe Families, because I want a family to love me and my son like that too. And just this idea that people just these moms, these families just so want to be loved. They just it's something that's been missing and something that they haven't had as they're growing up. And some of you might have seen this slide that I bring to some meetings I go to, this idea of relational ministry versus transactional ministry. And I think it summarizes a lot of safe families, and I think a lot of host families, after they have hosted a couple of times really resonate with a slide like this. Relational and transactional are very different. In many ways, if you're offering relational ministry, it's never over. Transactional ministry has a time limit. We're going to do this thing for you for this amount of time. It could be a service project. And when the project's over, it's just done. And there's a clean end, and you just know, January 15th, the project's over, and we're going to kind of go on with our life. In safe families, a lot of times it's really messy. And Nicole and I have really tried to emphasize with new teams and new families that it is messy, because it can look, when we first talk about safe families, it can sound so sweet. It can sound really nice. You have these cute little kids. They're going to stay with you a couple days. Things are going to get better. They'll go back to mom. But it often isn't quite so clear-cut, and it often is pretty messy. And if you're just offering a relationship with somebody, there's not, you don't just put an end date on the relationship and say, January 15th, I'm done with you. And of course, we're people-focused. This isn't a project. And transactional, for good reason, there's a tangible need. This time of year for month and a half, there's a lot of turkeys that get sent out. That's a great tangible need. Families can feel really blessed by getting food at this time of year. A turkey dinner and all of the fixings for a nice meal can go a long way, but that's way different than having a people focus where you're engaging with people for kind of an open-ended amount of time. And we're always trying to remind our families that connection is the goal, relationship is the goal, and not changing people, not the outcome. Like our success doesn't lie in whether this mom goes into rehab, stops using drugs, and becomes the kind of mom we think she should be. Our outcome is always, did we offer connection? Did we offer relationship? Was there somewhere in this mix that relationships grew? That doesn't have to be with the host family being best friends with mom. A lot of times it's not. It can be somebody else that comes alongside and becomes part of that relationship, and there's an ongoing connection where there wasn't before, and where if there's a crisis again, rather than being alone, this family now has people they can reach out to, people that they can connect to, and the kids can stay safe in the midst of that crisis. Unfortunately, a lot of times with relational ministry, we can have bad feelings in our volunteers, and many host families have gone through this where it's really painful, it's really uncomfortable, parts of hosting or saying goodbye to the kids when you have fallen in love with them, or the kids going back and then hearing that mom has made some unfortunate choices again, and we have host families that shed a lot of tears over their kids that they've hosted. And with a transactional ministry, oftentimes it's easier to kind of have that good feeling, like, yeah, we did something, and to kind of move on and feel good about it. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with transactional ministry. We're not trying to say that's a bad thing, just that it is a very different thing from relational, and it's very different from what Safe Families offers. Several months ago, we were hosting little girl, about first grade age, I think, and as happens fairly often, the bio mom didn't tell us all the details about the kid, and so this little girl comes to the host family's home, and before too long, she's starts having some tantrums and some kind of difficult behaviors to manage, and these were some pretty extreme tantrums, and not at all what we had expected or the host family expected. The host family, wanted to hang in there. They didn't want to give up, and they didn't want to just, pass her off to somebody else. And the mom was in rehab at the time, and we couldn't just send them back to mom without a fair bit of trouble. And, what ended up happening was this host family asked for some input, got some help, and one of the things that they tried was setting a little timer for about, I don't remember if it was 5 minutes or 15 minutes to start, but it was just the timer that they would set. The timer would go off, and that was a signal to just look this little first grader in the eyes and have some connection time. And I think they came up with a little song about a connection time, and that they could do that every 5 or 15 minutes, and then they could lengthen the time and extend that to go a little longer and a little longer and a little longer. And that reinforced all of the positive connection that little girl needed, as opposed to her tantrums and her rage and her fears that were feeding all of this negative behavior. And that little girl transformed in just a matter of days, and it was a beautiful thing. Even her behaviors at school transformed too. And it just really highlights this idea that connection is the goal, and it was connection that girl needed. Children are so hungry for connection, and they'll try to get it any way they can. And this connection that this mom offered was, this host mom offered this connection that was just healing. It was a healing thing for this little girl, and I think it highlights so well just these principles of Safe Families, that connection is our goal and relationship is our goal. And if we can hold on to that, it can get us through some pretty difficult times, because our mind likes to switch to judging and to fixing, and often takes us out of a compassionate place, and that can really throw a hosting totally off trajectory and mess it all up. When we're looking at these families, it's so important. One of the things we emphasize in Safe Families is what eyes do you use when you're looking at these families. And on this slide, you can see host family on the left, bio family on the right. And if the world was to look at you as a host family, or at this biological family, here's some of the words maybe they would use. They might look at you and think that you're amazing because you're taking in other people's kids. You're such a caring and loving person. There's a pretty good chance that our host families are living in the suburbs. Pretty good chance they're white. Pretty good chance that they're financially pretty well off. And then the world might look at the bio family and use a whole different list of labels, right? They might, most of the time it's going to be a single mom. They're going to see her as maybe an addict, or somebody that's being manipulative, or she's sure prideful because she won't do what she needs to change. They might have all kinds of ethnic labels, or all kinds of ways of looking at people. And it's good to notice in our own minds, where does our mind jump to when we're looking at each other? And the bottom just highlights there, through each other's eyes. When we as a host family, when we look at a bio parent, what comes to mind first? Do we see her as prideful, as judgmental? Is she intimidating? Is she manipulative? And it's not really that uncommon that the biological family looks at the host family and might think a lot of the same things. That perfect family, that they're and has some of these same judgments or fears related to the host family too. And of course, we don't want to stay looking through any of these eyes. Our hope is that we can look at all of life through God's eyes. And in actuality, God probably sees us all pretty similar, that host families and bio families are all his children, and that they're precious to him. And he sees them as a mother or a father. And he knows that we're all relationally poor. And I think that there's a great quote that I probably should have written down. Mother Teresa shared about just the poverty of Western countries being a poverty of relationship, and that is so much worse than having poverty of wealth. and that there's a lot of this relational poverty that affects both people in church and people in the community. And just thinking through, how does God see this family, and how does God see me? And we think a lot of times, if we just kind of evaluate, what eyes are we using to look at this family, it can help us find that compassionate spot, that compassionate place that's at the center of our heart, as opposed to a lot of these parts of our mind that we're used to living in that are kind of judgmental, or they're fearful, and they try to keep us safe. They try to manage our life, but they're not really the truest part of us where that compassion lives. This is a picture of Maria, and I didn't meet Maria, but Renee did. Renee, who first put this material together, and then Maria was in Southern California and called Safe Families, requesting a place for her kids to stay because she had to go to jail. And we could, look at, what words do people use. Maybe if they looked at Maria for the first time, and they might say, well, she's, a convict. She's been to jail. She's been in gangs. I mean, look at her tattoos. She's an isolated mom. She's connected to some bad folks, the organized crime folks. She's scary and tough. She's walled and she's resistant. They might use all kinds of words to describe Maria. And if we, I think if we met Maria on the street, we might have some defenses up too, just like, can I trust this person? What is she like? And so as we think about, what we were just saying, looking at somebody through which lens of eye, which eyes are we going to use to look at somebody? Maria connected with Renee through Safe Families, and their relationship blossomed and really grew. Renee was able to visit her a couple times when she was in jail, and then they continued relationship afterwards, and the host family continued relationship with hosting the kids, and Maria's life did start to change, and maybe some the other words we might use to describe Maria could be realizing that she's brokenhearted, that she's somebody's daughter and she's a mother. She's somebody's sister. She's a friend. She's alone and isolated and trying really hard to change, and realizing that there's all these different ways of viewing somebody that at first our judgment can keep at a distance. And I know that for Renee, she shares about Maria as one of the really special people in her in her time with Safe Families, somebody that she really bonded with and just kind of fell in love with. And I find that's true so many times, that people at first can have so many fears about the bio families that we meet, and occasionally you guys might hear it too, just some of the judgments people make about the families that need Safe Families, like how could they let their kids get exposed to that, or how could they do this or that. And I think almost every single person that we've worked with, or every host family, when they meet these bio parents, they just fall in love with them. They just can't not love them. And we talk about in Safe Families that the grace that we're trying to offer these families, even at first, when Maria looked kind of scary, even at first, grace is having a relationship with somebody's heart, and not their behavior, not just looking at their behavior and judging them, but wanting to know that they have a heart, a compassionate heart. The image of God is in them, just like it's in us. And can we live in that compassionate place and offer them grace? And so often it's easy to live in those judgmental parts of ourselves, those fear-filled parts, and that can even extend to ourselves. How much do we judge ourselves? And at the bottom it says, if you judge people, you have no time to love them. And I think for many people that extends to themselves too. You spend so much time judging ourselves throughout the day. It's just taking so much energy away from the good that could be done, or from just that time you could be spent in communion with God and with others. And so we just invite our families, when you're going to enter into relationship with these bio-parents, what eyes are you using? Are you using the world's eyes that's going to be quick to judge and compare and going to be quick to condemn? Or are we trying to use spiritual eyes that really rest in that place of compassion? I often think of a passage, I think it's in Matthew 9, where it says that Jesus looked out at the crowds and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And just how true that is, that people all around this world just don't have that good shepherd that they need to guide them, and that they are lost. And that place of compassion that Jesus lived in and lived from is where we're invited to live in and from as well. This other family was hosting a few months ago, and another little girl, that was having some behavior issues, and a young little girl, and the host mom told me a few weeks later, she said, this little girl and this mom seem so much alike. Like, this mom just reminds me so much of this little girl. And not just like, as you say, like a family resemblance or something, but just like their behaviors, and it's so true that these parents so often are living out of really young parts of themselves, really young places that they might look and be 28 years old, but they're living out of a much younger place. And I was able to tell that host mom, it's absolutely true. I mean, that's where this mom is at, and but the reality is that this mom didn't have anybody in her life to love her the way that you've been loving her daughter, and that her daughter has had this whole new encounter because of you offering this loving place, and that mom never ever had that. This 6-year-old part of mom never had somebody to love her the way that you're loving the daughter, and in so many ways, that's what these parents need. They need somebody to love them in order to start that deep, profound change that we hope for, but we can't make happen. And we always, of course, want to balance grace and truth. I mean, truth is important too, and a lot of people might be familiar with kind of that. There's a book, I think, Changes That Heal. It's a Christian book that talks about grace and truth over time, bringing a change. And we have to be really careful about truth. There's so many times when we feel like we really want to tell this mom something because it'll straighten her out, and yet oftentimes it'll just push her further away. And so we really encourage our families, offer front load with grace, and that you really have to earn the right to speak truth. And as I'm sure I know you can read that right there, when you think you've extended enough grace, you probably need to extend more and to wait even longer. Because when you've judged, when you have not judged, when you are empowering the parent, when you have loved them without strings, when you've held their child loosely, when you've handed it all to God, you might have earned the right to speak truth into their life. But so often, these families, they have such strong defenses, right? Such strong filters that everything comes in through. When you offer truth to them, so often that's going to be filtered as criticism. That's going to be filtered as condemnation. And it takes a long time for that grace to sink in, that somebody can offer truth that's really it's love, but it takes a long time till they can feel it that way. And it can be a lot of times when people want to bring that truth to these families, I've seen it push them further away, unfortunately, and so it's just a really delicate thing. We call it this mess of showing mercy. It's messy to offer mercy to families, and ministry through any church ministry that's trying to offer mercy is going to be pretty messy. And so these are some things to remember, when we're wanting to bring truth into someone's life, just that transformation is often found through suffering, that it's challenging and painful for our host families to hang in there with people. Our own mind, often wants to control things, and that's where it defaults to. It's going to be true for the bio families too. But if we can live in that place of not controlling, just kind of leaving the outcome open, that place of wondering, of not having all the answers, then a lot of times that leaves space for goodness and good things to happen. We have, several hostings going on right now that I don't have the answers for, and the parents aren't necessarily doing that well, and it's hard for the host families to hang in there. But when compassion for the child and loving on the child is the goal, then we leave the other outcomes up to God. And if we really want to offer truth to someone and try to bring it to them, we can continue to ask ourselves, is this really necessary? Is this going to produce fruit right now? We need to check our own heart. Sometimes we do just want to prove that I'm right, or we want to correct something. A lot of us have a way of listening to people, and we just listen for something to correct, in what they're saying, and then we stop listening until we get a chance to tell them what we want to correct. And then we have to be really careful, because there are times when speaking truth in these relationships, in effect, ends the relationship, and the bio parent pushes away. We've seen times where the bio parent feels like it's a rejection, and then they feel they need to end the hosting, and so they find a friend or family member where the kid can go, but it's really not healthy or as safe, and the kid may have been better off with the host family and just kind of hanging on for a little longer. But we, for the most part, we continually try to come back to not judging and to just keeping our hands open and letting God guide and direct the outcomes. It can sound kind of funny to say it, but for our families, it's a lot easier for these bio families to accept a program. They're used to programs that come along and provide a service, and so a lot of times, most of the time, they think of that's what we are. We're a service where your kids can stay, and sometimes that is all we are, and we don't actually get to grow a relationship. But our goal is always to grow a relationship and not to be just a program. And yet it's a lot harder to wrap one's mind around that this isn't being part of a program. With Safe Families, our families are offering a relationship. There's a family that wants to love you, and that can be really hard for people to grasp, and also hard to receive. A lot of times, kindness or unconditional love, people really push that away. It's not comfortable, and they can't receive it. The mom I told you about at the start, the one that told me, can you find a family, because I want a family to love me and my son that way. Right now, her son is being hosted, and he's being loved on immensely, but the mom right now is not in a place where she's letting people love her, and that's really hard, but it's also part of her survival mechanism, that she's kind of got her hands up, her hands out, just kind of keeping people away, because she doesn't know how to receive and take in that kind of love and acceptance. These are not the best ways of describing this, but just kind of thinking, as we come alongside these families, as we come alongside people, are we offering relationship, or are we viewing this as a task? The task is that you need to get a job, you need to get housing, you need to get a car, you need to budget, you need to do all of these things, and then your life will get better. And in a lot of ways, those are probably pretty true. But they're really not going to change the heart of a person. And if a person just needed advice, I mean, nobody would have any problems. There's enough advice to cure everybody's problems, right? But we're not viewing people as a task or as a program or as an object, but as a relationship. And so even to come alongside them, just thinking, how can I come alongside this mom, come alongside this family relationally, not just with a to-do list or a checkbox, that lets them know that I'm here with them, I'm doing this alongside them. And we talk with our host families about, you don't have to be somebody's counselor. You're not a job coach. You're not there to manage them. But just to come alongside like a friend would. I mean, if you were having coffee with your friend, how would you help them look for a job as opposed to, turning this into a task that this is just the check boxes that this mom needs to complete these check boxes, and then her life will get better. It doesn't draw anyone's heart to you or draw people together. One of the great ways we've seen again and again that kind of draws these moms together is just affirmation and affirming people. And there's numerous times, I mean, I can think of, but last summer there was a mom that contacted us who was going to be going to jail, and a host mom was willing to consider the hosting, and the host mom and I went down into Seattle, and we had coffee with the mom, and I was sharing with her about the program, and things were going just fine. We were going to fill out the paperwork and everything. But then when the host mom shared with the bio mom, when the host mom affirmed her, when she told her a little bit of her story, when she told her, just how impressed she was, and gave her these affirmations, I mean, it was like 10,000 times better than anything I could have said, partly because it was, one mom to another, but just that affirmation and that love that she showed in that conversation, it was amazing. It was just, you could visually see this mom sitting in this coffee shop just kind of soften and connect with this host mom, just to feel cared for so well. It was just amazing to see. And when we offer affirmations to people, we're trying to we're trying to be loving, but they also raise awareness of people's strengths. Maybe they didn't see that that's a strength in them, and maybe that helps them to build their self-confidence. I think with children, and also just in general, if we think about the difference between affirming someone and praising someone, if we're praising them and saying, I'm proud of you, I'm really proud of how you did that, or I think that's really special how you did that, in a lot of ways that's showing the motivation should come externally from someone else, like they should make this change because of I'm proud of them, and then the motivation is to please someone outside of themselves. It's kind of a subtle difference, but so many families we interact with already kind of believe that their life is externally controlled, that the state's controlling them, this other person's controlling them, their past is controlling them, and so much of their motivation comes externally. It's hard for a lot of people to shift that motivation to the internal, that it comes from themselves. And so a lot of times learning how to affirm people with you statements can be really helpful, and it can help them to see that they can have that motivation internally, and that they can be guided, kind of that internal strength, that they can make those changes. And so it can mean so much for a family that you're sitting with, just to say, you've been really brave, and there is a subtle difference in that than saying that I think you're brave. And I don't want to go into that too long here, but The other thing that really seems to really help families when they're bonding is that affirmation of their children. And when host families tell a mom, like, um, your daughter was so well behaved at dinner time, you done such a good job with her, or your daughter was so polite, or your daughter did really good at the playground today. Thinking of just different ways to praise the kids, and that just resonates in these moms' hearts so much, and it often goes a long way to bonding with host family and bio family, and just focusing on those affirmations. It can be really easy for us to kind of focus on the things that need to be fixed and to go into kind of checklist mode or fix-it mode, and then just kind of offer a checklist of things to fix, and that really is kind of counterproductive. It kind of draws people apart. Some of the safe things that we can assume when we're dealing with families. Excuse me. So, obviously we want to assume that they love their children, and to affirm that love that they have for their children. It's clear that you really love your kids so much, and that's really hard. They're feeling threatened that you might think they don't love their kids because they're letting a stranger watch their kids. Maybe you think they're a bad parent, and so affirming that love that they have for their kids, and not being in that judgmental place, but assuming this is a good parent, that she is show respect to her and affirm the job that she's doing, and assuming that she wants to make a good life for her child, and then wanting to help and offering to help if that's something that they want. It's kind of easy for us to throw out help and try to fix something that they don't really want fixed, and that can be frustrating because in our minds that should be kind of a high priority. Getting that job should be a little higher priority, but we can't make it a higher priority to that family, and it's really not going to grow the relationship if we force it. And then for a lot of our families, assuming that there may be criminal record, assuming substance use at some point, may not be now, but there probably has been in the past, and so being available to listen to the broken heart that has fed that substance use, and then assuming that there's violence in their life. Virtually every mom we've ever hosted has been exposed to domestic violence at some point, and it's so prevalent and widespread, and so being a safe person, treating them with tenderness, and being a kind person in their life, offering just a safe place where they can share and talk, and a lot of these assumptions, as you can see, they're looking at reality, but they're coming from a place of compassion, and offering that compassion to these families is so profoundly powerful that it can be unlike what they're used to, and they're going to have another crisis, and we can't fix all of their crisis, but if we can grow relationships, then they don't have to be alone when the next crisis comes, and they can have people that are compassionate and loving and safe wrapping around them as difficult times continue. You probably recognize this. 1 Corinthians 13 and Paul's love chapter, and just this reminder that all the things we do, they don't really, they're empty. They're empty if love isn't the root and the source and the base of it, and it's so easy. It's so easy. We see it so often with safe families, to fall into judging and but realizing that there's so little that we're really called to judge in this life, if anything. I mean, Paul even says, I think in Corinthians, that he doesn't even judge himself, and so we're just not called to judge these families. We're called to love them, to offer communion, to offer compassion, and in Safe Families, we find that often opens the doors to healing and growth. We're hoping that it opens the doors to a connection to God that they have never, that is new or is real for them, that is eternally healing. And so some of the things to remember, just as we're kind of summarizing these points from today, just which eyes are we looking at the world through? Are we looking through God's eyes in that compassionate place, or are we letting the world's thinking influence us and kind of determining what we are, how we're looking at people? And we're just calling people to be friends. Become a friend to these families. You don't have to fix them. You're not their case manager. You're not a professional, but just being a friend to these families. Grace is connecting to a person's heart, not their behavior, because a lot of these behaviors can drive you crazy. They can be frustrating. But remembering that this is a person that God loves, and God sees their heart, and connecting from your heart that is full of compassion that God put there, and not from your judgmental places, not from your fearful places, but connecting with their heart from your own heart, and remembering that we are encountering a person. This isn't a project. It's not something that we are called to fix. It may not be something we're capable of fixing, but this is a person, and they have never, they may never have had a relationship like the one you're able to offer. And again, we're hoping that we can offer affirmations and affirm these families, and that we're called to love the unlovable. We're called to love people even amidst difficult situations, and that it's really messy to offer mercy in a lot of these situations, and yet that's what we're called to do, is to offer compassion without judging. And if we can just summarize Safe Families as extending relationship and offering compassion, and that's and we just kind of stop there. There's a pull a lot of times for people to go on and want to fix things, but so often that just detracts us from being compassionate and being loving. As we're winding things down and wrapping things up, if there's anything that you guys want to ask questions about, feel free to type them in there and share some of those questions. And I think one of the things that, we see a lot of hard stories, we see sad stories, but we also do see those things where over time these host families, offering connection, just offering that love, and seeing just the space for safety to be present, the space for healing to come. Maybe not to everyone involved, but just giving that safety in that time where these kids are able to be protected for a time. They're able to have a safe place, and then see things that work out for them that just wouldn't have worked out without Safe Families, without that avenue of relationship and that avenue of safety. We shared on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, I think, about this mom in Tacoma who was going to have to go to jail, and her abusive boyfriend might have got the kid, or foster system might have got the kid, but she was able to find Safe Families and got through that difficult time, and then found family out of state where she could go and stay, and it's just powerful to see just these offerings of compassion, just giving a little bit of room and some time for safety and healing to come to play in these families' lives. If we don't have any questions, we're going to kind of wrap things up there. And we threw out a lot of information, just kind of how to look at our families and kind of ways of offering this compassion and living this way of safe families. Thank you so much for taking part in our webinar today. And you can always email me if you have other questions or things you want to talk about. And we'd certainly appreciate emails with suggestions on things that you would like to, that you would think could make things better, and things that we could do better in the future. So we thank you very much, and I hope you guys have a really great weekend and a blessed holiday season as we remember that Christ is born. And thank you so much for being part of Safe Families. Okay, bye-bye.